Leaked confidential documents have revealed a political disaster for Keir Starmer, exposing a stark contradiction between his public statements and private admissions. These papers, obtained by the Sunday Times*, detail a 6-hour cabinet meeting at Lancaster House in February, where Starmer candidly addressed his inner circle. The revelations are so damaging that Labour MPs are reportedly drafting resignation letters as the walls close in around their leader. The bombshell letter, the leaked letter, addressed to Starmer's cabinet ministers, uncovers a double-edged sword cutting through his carefully crafted public image. While Starmer has publicly positioned himself as tough on immigration, the letter reveals a private admission that Labour has treated all immigration as an untrammeled good. This contradiction is particularly damaging in Labour's traditional strongholds across northern England and the Midlands, where constituents have long felt their immigration concerns were dismissed by the party elite. In the letter, Starmer acknowledges that working-class voters who raise concerns about immigration are not racist, a stark departure from Labour's previous stance, which often implied that such concerns were rooted in prejudice. He writes, "Our voters, our people, were telling us over and over that we were wrong." This admission highlights a growing disconnect between the political establishment and the working-class voters Labour claims to represent. Starmer's private remarks also reveal his fear of Nigel Farage and Reform UK, whom he sees as the real opposition. The letter underscores his concern about losing traditional Labour voters to Farage's growing influence, stating that Labour must offer something to those who feel ignored by elites. Brexit betrayal exposed. The leaks don't stop at immigration. A separate 19-page document reveals shocking details about Starmer's Brexit negotiations with the EU. The papers show Brussels officials mocking Starmer while demanding significant concessions, including the reintroduction of free movement for students aged 18 to 30, complete with access to free healthcare and subsidized education. This effectively undermines one of Brexit's core promises, regaining control of borders. The EU also insists on maintaining European fishing rights in British waters beyond 2026, crushing hopes for the UK's fishing communities. Additionally, Brussels demands that the UK submit to the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice for veterinary health deals, reversing another key Brexit achievement. Lord Frost, the UK's lead Brexit negotiator, has described these concessions as the legal and political subjugation of this country to Brussels. The timing of the leak is particularly damaging, as it comes amid growing public concern about Starmer's ability to uphold Brexit's promises. Internal chaos in number 10 *. The leaks also expose internal dysfunction within Starmer's government. A separate revelation about Sue Gray, Starmer's chief of staff, has caused turmoil in number 10. Gray, who earns a staggering £170,000, more than the Prime Minister himself, reportedly refused a request to take a pay cut, sparking outrage among taxpayers already facing austerity measures. The leak has led to a Cabinet Office investigation, with Starmer more focused on identifying the source of the leak than addressing the glaring hypocrisy within his administration. Critics argue that this episode highlights a lack of transparency and accountability, with unelected officials like Gray wielding significant power while the Prime Minister appears increasingly weak. A government in crisis. These leaks paint a picture of a government in disarray, with Starmer struggling to maintain control over his own administration. From immigration and Brexit to internal mismanagement, the revelations have exposed a leader who says one thing in public and another behind closed doors. As Labour's traditional voters continue to feel alienated, the party faces an uphill battle to regain their trust. The timing of these leaks couldn't be worse for Starmer, coming as Labour's polling numbers show vulnerability in its heartlands. With internal dissent growing and public confidence eroding, the political earthquake triggered by these confidential documents may have far-reaching consequences for Starmer's leadership and the future of the Labour Party. Keir Starmer's government has come under intense scrutiny after leaking key portions of a major defence spending statement to the media while simultaneously redacting those same sections from documents provided to Parliament and opposition leaders. This blunder, more befitting of a student council than the British government, has sparked outrage across the political spectrum. Speaker Lindsay Hoyle delivered a scathing rebuke in the House of Commons, emphasising that the ministerial code requires statements to be shared with the opposition and the Speaker in advance. It does not provide for the text to be redacted, he stated. I am particularly concerned by reports that some of the redacted information was provided to the media beforehand. If true, that is highly discourteous to this House. The chamber fell silent as MPs watched Starmer shift uncomfortably in his seat. The issue transcends procedural missteps. It strikes at the core of parliamentary democracy. Clearly rattled, Starmer pledged an inquiry into his own government's actions, assuring the Speaker, I will absolutely conduct an investigation into this, but I would never be that discourteous. I spoke to you this morning, Mr. Speaker. I would not be discourteous to you, the Leader of the Opposition, or the House. Yet, in the same breath, he denied that his government leaked the information while simultaneously promising to investigate whether they had. It was a masterclass in political doublespeak. The leaked documents revealed plans to raise defense spending from 2.3% to 2.5% of GDP by 2027, financed by cutting international development aid from 0.5% to 0.3%, a classic case of giving with one hand while taking with the other. Opposition leader Kemi Badenoch seized the moment with sharp political instincts, sarcastically thanking Starmer for the partial statement she received, pointing out that journalists were given full access to the details while Parliament was left in the dark. Starmer's discomfort was palpable, and the timing of this scandal couldn't be worse. With allegations of an inflated salary for Sue Gray and ongoing dysfunction within Number 10 still making headlines, this latest fiasco raises serious questions about his administration's competence. Their failure to properly handle a planned statement suggests either deliberate media manipulation or sheer administrative chaos, neither of which inspires confidence. The controversy surrounding this redacted statement underscores a deeper problem, a fundamental disregard for parliamentary scrutiny. By selectively leaking information to friendly media while withholding it from elected representatives, Starmer's government attempted to game the system. Ironically, this is precisely the kind of behavior Starmer vehemently condemned while in opposition. Now, just months into his premiership, he finds himself investigating his own administration for potential breaches of the ministerial code. It's akin to a self-proclaimed model driver getting caught speeding within their first week on the road. The government that promised to restore trust in politics is instead eroding it at an alarming rate. The defense statement leak is just one in a series of missteps reinforcing the growing perception that Starmer's administration is both incompetent and untrustworthy, failing to uphold basic parliamentary standards and lacking transparency with both Parliament and the public. Further leaks from the Treasury have compounded the crisis, revealing that Chancellor Rachel Reeves was well aware of the damaging effects of her tax hikes on care providers and hospices. Internal Treasury documents expose the stark contrast between public messaging and private knowledge. While Reeves publicly spoke about making difficult decisions and protecting the vulnerable, behind closed doors, she had full knowledge that her policies would push hospices to the brink of bankruptcy. These tax increases, now being dubbed a Trojan horse, were presented as necessary for fiscal responsibility, yet internal analysis explicitly warned of their catastrophic consequences. Despite these warnings, Reeves pushed forward, all while maintaining a facade of concern for society's most vulnerable. The Treasury leaks also expose a calculated effort to manipulate public perception. The widely publicised £4,400 pension increase, conveniently leaked to the BBC, was no accident. Internal analysis reveals this was a deliberate distraction from the government's decision to cut winter fuel allowances for 10 million pensioners. It's a classic political shell game, drawing attention to one policy while quietly implementing another that directly harms the elderly. The deception is so blatant that the UK's statistics watchdog is now considering an inquiry into whether the pension figure leak breached regulations on sensitive economic data. Reeves has justified these budgetary measures as necessary adjustments, but the leaked documents paint a different picture, one of cynical political maneuvering, where the needs of hospices and care facilities were knowingly sacrificed to balance the books. The revelations highlight an administration that is not only failing to be transparent but is actively misleading the public. Meanwhile, another set of leaks threatens to upend Labour's political future entirely. Internal polling data reveals that traditional Labour strongholds are shifting towards Reform UK at an unprecedented rate. The most damning aspect: Labour insiders admit they have no clear strategy to win back the working-class voters who are abandoning them in droves. These confidential documents show Reform UK capturing up to 35% of former Labour voters in key northern constituencies, potentially becoming the dominant party in areas Labour has controlled for generations. The panic within Labour HQ is palpable. Their own internal assessments confirm what many suspected: Labour has drifted too far from its roots, alienating the working-class communities it once relied on. This isn't just temporary discontent, it's a long-term realignment. Starmer's team now faces an existential crisis. Every scandal, every betrayal, and every leak contributes to a relentless downward spiral. Labour's polling collapse is directly tied to their policy failures and internal dysfunction. The most unsettling revelation in these leaks is the sheer level of denial within the party leadership. Even as they acknowledge the disconnect between Labour's metropolitan elite and traditional working-class voters, they seem utterly incapable of reversing the trend. With scandal after scandal piling up and his electoral foundation crumbling, Starmer's leadership faces an unprecedented test. Labour's own confidential polling suggests that the political realignment underway may permanently shift Britain's political landscape, with Reform UK emerging as a major force. What makes these leaks so damaging is that they shatter the carefully curated narrative of Labour as a broad-based party with nationwide appeal. Instead, the documents reveal an organisation in turmoil, losing the very voters it claims to represent. Political analysts are now sounding the alarm. These continuous leaks aren't just embarrassing, they're forming the perfect storm that could threaten Starmer's entire government. The chain reaction is clear. Each new revelation erodes public confidence, weakens party loyalty, and diminishes Starmer's authority. The cumulative effect could be catastrophic. With mounting scandals, ministerial code violations, and a growing disconnect from its voter base, Starmer's government is now at a crossroads. The real question is whether he can weather this political storm, or if his own party will decide that it's time for new leadership before the next election.